I worked 60 hours a week in the Texas heat, so my family never went without. The mortgage was paid on time. Every time. My daughter went to the best private school in the city. My wife had the freedom to chase her career dreams. Take online courses. Even launch side projects that rarely turned a profit. None of that mattered to me. I covered it. Because that's what a husband and father does. You sacrifice so the people you love can live better than you ever did. I thought we were solid. That's what everyone around us said. 2. Friends called us the couple to follow. Family said we had it figured out: marriage, parenting, finances, the whole package. Out in public, it looked unshakable. But here's the truth. Even the strongest looking concrete can hide cracks beneath the surface. And if you ignore those cracks, one day they spread until the whole structure collapses. I didn't realize how deep those cracks ran until one Friday afternoon. I had just come back from a site inspection in Houston. $60 million on the line. The kind of project that could break a man if he wasn't disciplined. But I delivered. On schedule. Under budget. Steady as ever. I drove home tired. Dirty. But proud. I walked through the front door, expecting the usual: my wife at her desk. My daughter buried in homework. Maybe the smell of dinner drifting from the kitchen. Instead, I found her in our bedroom. A suitcase was open on the bed. At first, I thought nothing of it. She traveled sometimes for client meetings. But something about the way she packed stopped me cold. This wasn't a rushed business trip. She was folding carefully. Piece by piece. Like she was preparing for something meaningful. And then I saw it, the red dress I bought her for our anniversary. Lingerie I'd never once seen her wear. "Where are you going?" I asked. She didn't even look up. "Travis needs me," she said. Travis. A name I hadn't heard in over a decade. Her ex from college. Apparently. They'd reconnected on Instagram. His wife had left him. He was in a bad place. And according to her, she was the one who could save him. I just stood there in the doorway. "You're packing lingerie to help a friend." She spun around. Face already defensive. "Don't make this something it's not. He needs someone who understands him." "And that's you?" I asked. "Yes." She shot back. "We have history. I know how his mind works." Before I could answer, my daughter appeared in the hallway. 16 years old. Full of teenage fire. "Dad. Stop being so controlling. Mom's just trying to help someone. And you're making it all about you." My wife's eyes lit up. Backup had arrived. She turned to me. "See, even Emily understands. This is why we have problems. David. You don't trust me. You're emotionally unavailable. You bury yourself in work. You're never really here." I reminded her of our conversation just last night, about renovating the bathroom. About the plans we'd made. She shook her head. "That's not talking. That's logistics." Emily crossed her arms, glaring at me. "Mom deserves to have friends. You can't just lock her up here." And that's when it hit me: this wasn't a spontaneous moment. This was rehearsed. They'd already talked about this. They had prepared the ambush. Rehearsed the lines. Set the trap. The guilt trip wasn't improvised. It was planned. I let the silence stretch until she looked away. Then I said, "Okay." She blinked. "Okay. Go help Travis." I said flatly, "Take all the time you need." It wasn't the reaction she expected. She studied me. Suspicious. Trying to figure out why I wasn't exploding. Emily frowned. Confused that I wasn't fighting. My wife zipped the suitcase. Her hands trembling. I carried it downstairs. Loaded it into the Mazda I bought her last year. And kissed her forehead. "Drive safe," I told her. Then I stepped back and watched her reverse down the driveway. Probably wondering why I was letting go so easily. What she didn't know was that I'd already seen the credit card statements. Restaurant charges in Miami. Tolls on the I-95. Purchases from a lingerie boutique that didn't match anything in our house. She wasn't leaving for the first time. She'd already been there. She'd already chosen him, and in that moment, as her taillights disappeared down the street, something inside me shifted. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel despair. I felt clarity, because the cracks in the concrete weren't just visible now, they were wide open. And instead of patching them, instead of pretending the structure could still stand, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to fight to keep her. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to rebuild on my terms. With my hands. From the ground up. I didn't fight her that night. I carried her suitcase to the car. Kissed her on the forehead. and let her go. But don't mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. The truth was, I'd already seen enough to know where this road led 2 weeks earlier. I logged into our credit card account and noticed charges that didn't add up. Dinners in Miami, a boutique lingerie purchase I never saw in our closet, hotel stays that didn't fit with the story she told me about client meetings. At first, I told myself it was nothing, a glitch, a mistake. But the more I looked, the more the pattern emerged. That same week, my daughter had shown me how to check Instagram stories without being seen. I didn't ask for the lesson, she offered it while scrolling through her friends' accounts. I nodded, pretending not to care. But the moment she left the room, I searched my wife's profile. There it was, oceanfront cafe, sunrise walks on the beach, Jim selfies her ex in the foreground, her reflection in the mirror behind him, smiling, glowing, alive in a way I hadn't seen at home in years. She never sent me those photos. To me, she sent texts about feeling tired, about needing space, about wanting to focus on herself. But online, she was already building a different life, one where I didn't exist. So by the time she stood in front of me with that suitcase, pretending it was the first trip, I already knew it wasn't. I wasn't losing her. I'd lost her months ago. The only thing left was how I would respond. I could have yelled. I could have begged. I could have thrown her things out the window and called every friend we had to expose her. But that's what she expected, an outburst. Something messy she could twist into her version of the story. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I went quiet. I went methodical. The next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office. He wasn't just a contracts man for my company, he also handled family law. We laid out a plan. Step by step, no wasted motion, no missed details. I redirected my salary into a new account she couldn't touch, removed her as an authorized user on my cards, changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance and retirement accounts, from her name to my daughter's, with my brother as trustee. I wasn't just cutting her off, I was securing the future. Then I called in a forensic accountant. I wanted a full picture. Every transfer, every expense, every hidden leak. What he found made my blood run cold. $12,000 had disappeared from our joint offset account, the one tied to our mortgage. The transfer memo said, marketing conference deposit. Except there was no conference. I called her biggest client, a longtime friend in the construction supply business. He hadn't heard a word about any conference. But he did mention something else: she'd been missing deadlines. Distracted, sloppy in her work. The accountant dug deeper. Small transfers, always with tidy little explanations. A client dinner here, a software subscription there, 500 here, 300 there, over months. It added up, another $8,000 gone, $20,000 siphoned out of our household, $20,000 I sweated for under a Texas sun, working 12-hour days, just to bankroll another man's life. It wasn't just betrayal of the heart, it was theft. And now I had the receipts. While she spent her days in Miami, posting filtered smiles and writing noble captions about helping a friend through hard times, I spent mine collecting evidence, bank records, screenshots, timestamps, every piece of the puzzle documented and secured. I didn't rage. I didn't threaten. I built. That's what I do. I've spent 2 decades turning blueprints into towers of glass and steel. You don't build skyscrapers by throwing bricks at the sky. You build them with foundations, structure, precision. And that's exactly how I handled her betrayal. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought she'd framed the story so that I looked controlling, cold, untrusting. She thought walking out with my daughter's sympathy meant she was safe from consequence. She didn't realize I was already building the exit ramp, because when a structure shows cracks, you don't scream at the concrete. You don't cry over the dust. You bring in the engineer. You study the blueprint. And you decide whether to repair or rebuild. I'd already made my decision, and as each day passed, as each statement arrived, as each screenshot landed in the folder I created, my resolve only grew stronger. This wasn't just about her leaving. It was about me refusing to stay trapped inside a crumbling structure. She had chosen lies. I was choosing evidence. She had chosen impulse. I was choosing discipline. And when the time came, she wouldn't be facing an angry husband. She'd be facing a man with every fact, every number, and every legal weapon lined up in perfect order. I didn't explode. I didn't chase her. I documented. I secured. I prepared, because this wasn't the end of the story. It was the foundation of a new one, and in my world, foundations are everything. When she pulled out of the driveway that Friday, suitcase in the back seat, she thought she was free. Free to chase an old flame. Free to play savior to a man who hadn't built anything lasting in his life. Free to reinvent herself as the selfless woman, helping a friend through a hard time. What she didn't realize was that her freedom came with a clock. 15 days. That's all it took for me to change the entire foundation of our marriage and my life. On day 1, I redirected my salary into a separate account with only my name on it. Every hour I worked in the Texas sun. Every contract I fulfilled. Every dollar I earned no longer flowed into the joint account she had access to. From that day forward, she couldn't touch a single cent without me allowing it. On day 2, I updated my life insurance and retirement beneficiaries. Her name was erased. Replaced with my daughter's. My brother listed as trustee until she was old enough to manage it herself. That one form stripped away her imagined future safety net. On day 3, I hired a forensic accountant, a quiet man with sharp eyes and no small talk. I handed him access to our accounts. Every receipt. Every statement. His job was simple: find the truth hiding in the numbers. While I moved pieces into place, she played her part. Her texts came through like clockwork, short updates, carefully written to sound noble. Made him eat today. Watching movies to keep his mind off things. He's finally smiling again. Each message framed her as the angel. The selfless caretaker. The woman who had traded her own comfort for another man's healing. But Instagram told the truth she didn't want me to see. Sunrise walks on Miami Beach. Her face glowing in the reflection of his sunglasses. Breakfast at Oceanfront Cafe. Plates of fruit and champagne glasses side by side. Gym selfies, Travis flexing in the foreground. Her frame visible in the mirror behind him. Not grief. Not sacrifice. A vacation. A second honeymoon she thought I'd never know about. And here's the thing, she didn't even hide it well. She forgot that she herself had taught our daughter how to check stories anonymously. Emily showed me once, bragging about how she could watch her friends' posts without being noticed. I remembered. And now, every morning, while my wife thought she was curating her secret life, I was quietly scrolling through it. By day 4, her texts slowed. She must have believed she'd sold the story well enough that she didn't need to keep up appearances. But she kept posting, and those posts painted the full picture. Meanwhile, the accountant uncovered more than I expected. Not just the $12,000 she drained from our offset account, but smaller transfers spread over months. Little leaks disguised as software subscriptions. Client dinners. Course enrollments. Together, they added up to $20,000 gone. And not gone into investments or education, but into him. Into propping up a man who didn't have the discipline to stand on his own. $20,000 of my sweat, my labor, my sacrifices poured into another man's pocket. I didn't rage when I saw the reports. I didn't slam my fist on the desk. I simply added them to the folder. Evidence. Every printout. Every screenshot. Every timestamp documented and stored. While she believed she was escaping my control, I was building my exit. Quietly. Methodically. Brick by brick. Day 7. She posted a photo at a rooftop bar. Golden hour light spilling across her shoulders. The caption read, "Sometimes healing looks like holding space for someone else." I stared at it for a long time. She thought she was holding space. What she didn't realize was that she was burning bridges, every single one that connected her back to me. Day 10. She stopped texting entirely. Not a word. Not a check-in. Not even a fabricated excuse. But the posts didn't stop. Beach clubs. Cocktails. Laughter. She had gone all in. And she believed the silence at home meant she had nothing to fear. But silence can mean many things. Sometimes silence is distance. Sometimes silence is surrender. And sometimes silence is the sound of a man quietly rearranging the foundation of his life so thoroughly that by the time you walk back through the door, you no longer have a place in it. By day 15, I was ready. Accounts separated. Beneficiaries updated. Evidence stacked neatly in chronological order. My lawyer briefed. Paperwork drafted. Every loose thread tied down. When her car finally crunched into the driveway that evening, she thought she was walking back into the same house. The same marriage. The same man she'd left behind 2 weeks earlier. She didn't know she was stepping into a structure she no longer had the keys to, and I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt steady, because I wasn't losing control. I was reclaiming it step by step. 15 days later, she walked back through the door like she was returning from a spa retreat. Fresh tan. New haircut. Sundress I didn't recognize. She glowed. As if the 2 weeks had been healing. Transformative, David, she said brightly, appearing in my office doorway. You won't believe how much I helped him. He's eating again. He's finding joy again. It was so meaningful. So powerful. Being there for him, every word sounded rehearsed. Like she'd practiced it in the car on the way back from Miami. She wanted me to see her as a savior. She wanted me to applaud. Instead, I said only dinner's at 7. Your parents are coming. Mine too. She hesitated. Eyes flickering. I'm tired from the drive. 7. I repeated. What she didn't know was that this dinner wasn't a welcome home celebration. It was the stage I'd been preparing for weeks. And the audience was already on their way, at 7 sharp. The table was set. She changed into something more conservative, clearly hoping to appear respectable in front of both sets of parents. My parents. Her parents. Our daughter Emily, all seated around the table. At first, the conversation was polite. Small talk about Emily's school. The weather. My latest construction project. The kind of banter families use to fill space before something real drops. And then she cleared her throat, placed her napkin down gently, looked around the table with a faint smile. I have something to share, she said. Emily straightened, as if she already knew. My wife glanced around, savoring the spotlight. Then said it. I'm pregnant. Gasps circled the table. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. That's wonderful. David. You must be so. It's not mine, I said, cutting through the air like a blade. The room froze. Forks halfway to mouths. Chairs stiffening. My wife's face drained of color. What her father demanded. Palms flat on the table. It's not mine. I repeated evenly. It's Travis's, my wife stammered. Dad. I can explain. No. I said. I'll explain. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd spent 15 days building, and placed it on the table. Screenshots, bank records, credit card statements, Instagram stories, timestamps, proof that she had been with him for months, not days. Proof that conception happened during her so-called mercy mission. No's, one by one. The faces around the table shifted. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Her father's jaw tightened, hands trembling like he wanted to put a fist through the wall. My parents sat in silence, eyes on me, waiting. Emily stared down at her plate, cheeks flushed, jaw tight. My wife's voice cracked. David, we can work through this. Couples therapy, a blended family. You don't have to. Get out. I said. She blinked. This is my house too. No, it's not. I reached into the folder again and slid a document across the table. The deed. My signature. My name only. I had bought the house before our marriage. Her name wasn't on it. Not on the title. Not on the loan. Not anywhere. The only thing in your name is the Mazda in the driveway. I told her. That's yours to keep. The rest isn't. She scrambled for footing. You can't just. I can. I have. Her father stood, chair scraping across the hardwood. We're leaving, he said firmly. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to her feet. She tried to protest, but he cut her off. Guiding her toward the door, Emily stayed in her chair, not even looking at her mother as she was ushered out. The front door closed. Silence filled the room. Heavy and final, I sat back down, picked up my fork, and cut into my steak. For the first time in months, I tasted peace. While she had spent 15 days chasing a fantasy, I had spent 15 days building freedom. And as I finished that meal surrounded by the people who mattered, I realized something important. Sometimes the loudest justice isn't shouting. Sometimes it's simply the sound of a man eating dinner in peace after months of chaos. And that's exactly what I did. The morning after that dinner, I drove to my lawyer's office. By noon, the divorce petition was filed. Custody papers, property settlements, every financial detail outlined down to the last cent. It wasn't emotional. It was structural. I treated it like any other project: blueprints, deadlines, execution. Then I turned to the people she had built her illusions around: her family and her clients. Her parents were the first to see the full package. I handed them the records, transfers, messages, receipts, screenshots. At first, they wanted to believe her story, but the evidence was undeniable. Her father cut her off completely. Her mother wept, realizing her daughter had been siphoning money and spinning lies while smiling across Sunday dinners. Next came the business community. Dallas isn't a small town, but reputations travel fast. Her biggest client, a man I've known for years, dropped her the moment he saw the proof. Others followed. It turned out when a social media manager gets caught lying on her own social media, it's not just a moral failure, it's bad for business. The inspirational quotes she posted every morning suddenly looked hollow. The followers who once called her authentic flooded her page with words like liar, fraud, homewrecker. She tried to spin it. Of course. Emotional abuse, finding herself, brave choices. But hashtags can't erase receipts. And I had them all. Meanwhile, Travis, the man she'd thrown our family away for, lasted less than a week after she told him about the pregnancy. 6 days. To be exact. He met her in a cafe. In public. Told her he wasn't ready. That maybe his ex-wife would take him back. And then he blocked her number. She had gambled everything on him. And he folded without blinking. After that, the spiral began. She jumped from one unstable relationship to another. Trainers. Entrepreneurs. Men who looked good in filtered photos but vanished as soon as responsibility showed up. Each time she tried to reinvent herself, the pattern repeated. I didn't gloat. I didn't chase her down. I didn't need to, because the truth was simple. I didn't ruin her life. I simply stopped protecting the lies she lived on. At first, Emily resisted the truth. She wanted to believe her mother's version of the story, that I was controlling, that I pushed too hard, that this was all about me not trusting enough. Teenagers want to defend the parent who plays victim. It feels noble. She repeated her mother's lines almost word for word. Dad, you're making her feel guilty for having feelings. You're shutting her out. I didn't argue. I didn't lash out. I didn't throw the evidence in her face and demand she choose sides. I simply let her talk, then went quiet. Because I knew something she didn't yet: the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to stand still long enough for people to recognize it. Weeks passed. Slowly, the cracks in her mother's story began to show. Emily saw the screenshots her mother couldn't explain. She overheard the calls from grandparents who no longer believed the performance. She noticed the way her mother's business collapsed overnight. Clients disappearing one after another. And then one evening, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, her phone in her hand, her eyes tired but clear. I believe you now, she said quietly. I looked up, careful not to rush her. I saw the proof. She continued. Mom kept telling me you were twisting things. But you weren't. You were just showing what really happened. She's the one who walked away from us. I didn't celebrate. I didn't say, I told you so. I just nodded. I'm glad you see it. Emily, in that moment, something shifted between us. She wasn't just my daughter caught in the crossfire anymore. She was beginning to understand what it meant to draw boundaries, to see through manipulation, to stand on her own truth. The anger I could have carried, the bitterness I could have spilled over into her life, I chose not to, because I realized the most important lesson I could give her wasn't revenge. It was restraint. So instead of raising my voice, I modeled quiet strength. Instead of cursing her mother, I showed her how a man endures betrayal without losing his dignity. I let her see that you don't have to burn everything down to protect yourself. You can simply close the door and walk away. For me, that was survival. For Emily, it was education. She began to notice the difference. The peace in my home versus the chaos in her mother's. The calm conversations we shared versus the emotional storms she weathered when she visited the other side. Slowly, she stopped defending the person who had betrayed us both, and instead, she leaned toward the one who had stayed steady. By the time she finally said, Dad, thank you for not being weak, I understood what she really meant. Thank you for not collapsing. Thank you for showing me that strength isn't loud or violent, it's steady, patient, unshakable. And in that, she wasn't just rebuilding her trust in me. She was learning how to trust herself. That was the moment I knew the damage done to our family didn't have to define her future, because sometimes the best way to protect your child isn't to shield them from pain, it's to show them how to face it without losing themselves. I met Claire on a downtown project, a structural engineer brought in to review load calculations for a high-rise. At first, it was all business. Blueprints spread across conference tables. Discussions about weight distribution, deadlines, safety codes. She was sharp, direct, and steady in a way that caught my attention without her ever trying. It struck me one evening as I drove home. My ex had spent years tearing at the foundations of our life, while here I was, working beside a woman who specialized in building them stronger. Claire wasn't flashy. She didn't fill rooms with drama or chase attention. She built quietly and consistently, in her work and in the way she carried herself. And without realizing it, she reminded me that strength doesn't always come from resistance. It often comes from creation. Emily met her by chance. Claire stopped by my house one afternoon to drop off revised plans, and they ended up talking at the kitchen table for 2 hours about architecture programs, design software, and the kind of future Emily could picture for herself. That night, Emily told me, "She's smart, smarter than Mom." Not pretending smart, actually smart. It wasn't just approval in her voice. It was relief. Relief that stability had returned. That she could finally see me with someone who built instead of destroyed. And as I listened to them laughing in the kitchen, I realized something I'd missed for years. I'd spent decades constructing skyscrapers, towers of glass and steel that reshape skylines. But the hardest, most meaningful project of my life wasn't out there in the city. It was right here. At home, rebuilding a family after betrayal. Years passed, and the chaos that once defined my life became nothing more than background noise. My ex drifted from one failed relationship to another, each man leaving faster than the last, each story collapsing under the weight of her own choices. She became a shadow of who she once pretended to be. A reminder of what happens when you keep burning the same bridges and expect someone else to rebuild them. Meanwhile, Emily thrived. She earned scholarships, excelled in her studies, and began carving out a future that had nothing to do with the dysfunction she'd been dragged through. The pride I felt watching her step into her own life eclipsed every skyscraper I ever built. She became living proof that truth and stability will always outlast lies and chaos. And me, I rebuilt, brick by brick, day by day. I remarried a woman who valued honesty, who built instead of destroyed, who stood beside me without games or secrets. Life became calm, steady, free of the constant storm. Looking back, I know now strength isn't found in yelling, fighting, or striking back. Strength is found in walking away, locking the gate behind you, and never looking over your shoulder. Betrayal didn't just break me, it rebuilt me. Taller, stronger, untouchable. And brothers, let me ask you this. If you were me, would you have fought to keep her? Or walked away like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your story. And if this one spoke to you, hit like, subscribe, and keep building the kind of life no one can tear down.